Hello everyone, good afternoon, welcome. Good to see all of you here and welcome to the symposium about facing your FOMO. I'm Elin, I'm your moderator for this symposium. I'm also the chair of Serve the City Tilburg. This is one of the co-organizers of this symposium. Serve the City Tilburg is a student volunteer organization. We organize voluntary work and we do that with students for multiple target groups. So that is why we organize this, to give you a little bit more information about FOMO and the societal impact of it. The other organizer of this event is Studium Generale. They organize other lectures like these or symposia like these, and also Night University and many other things. And you can get a certificate if you join 5 of these educational symposia and you write a little text about it. You can find more information about that on the website of Studium Generale. Okay, so FOMO. I think many of you heard a bit about FOMO, but I want to test a little bit what you already know or think about with FOMO. So we have this Mentometer. If it's working, yeah. Oh, ja, ik weet het niet meer. Oh, wacht. Yes. Okay, so you can scan the QR code or fill in the code on menti.com, and you can fill in words what you think about when you hear FOMO. And this can be everything. It can be psychological, it can be social media, or whatever you first think about. You can also do multiple words, whatever you want. Okay, the first responses show up. Fear and anxiety, always online. Social media, pressure, missing out. What if? Stress. Well, it doesn't sound very positive, that's for sure. Yeah, fear of missing out, of course. Yeah, and the biggest words are the ones that are mentioned the most. So social media is one, stress, and fear of missing out, yeah. Yeah, of course, the term FOMO stands for fear of missing out. So obviously, this is the one that pops to mind mostly, but also anxiety and stress, of course, that comes with the fear. It's the fear of missing out on events and everything. I think we all can understand the feeling of FOMO, especially when you're a little bit more online. You're scrolling when you're tired on your Instagram and you see all the pictures of your friends in Bali, or they are at a big party or whatever, and you're just laying in bed and thinking, oh, I'm missing out on so much. I think we all know this feeling of kind of falling behind and not getting everything out of life. So that's what we're going to talk about today in this symposium. I'm going to give you a little schedule on what we are doing this afternoon. We first are going to watch a short video on FOMO to give you a little introduction on what it is. After that, we are going to hear 2 small lectures from 2 psychologists with another perspective. And then after that, you can ask the questions to the psychologist. And after that, we have an interactive discussion panel with the 2 speakers of the lectures and also a student for a student's perspective. And you can ask your own questions during the panel discussion. After that, we have some drinks. You can get a coin when you go outside, and you can have some free drinks at the cafe here. So we welcome you to do that, obviously, and to talk a little bit more about this topic. Then we're going to watch the small video now. Okay, great. Now we have a little introduction on this topic, and let's dive a little deeper into this topic. I'm going to introduce the first speaker, Marcel Zeelenberg. He's a teacher here at Tilburg University, a professor of economic psychology, but he also has a background in cognitive psychology and social psychology. The thing you're most invested in is in decision making, how people make decisions, and also the emotional part and the motivational part. So let's give a round of applause to Marcel Zeelenberg.
Thank you. So basically what you just saw in the clip and what was just said, that is what I'm going to say. So if you fall asleep now, you'll know most of it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit extra. That might also be worthwhile listening to. You see rupsje nooit genoeg, the caterpillar that is never satisfied. That plays a role in my thinking nowadays. And that stands for the psychology of greed, hebzucht. Because that is one of the things that I'm thinking about in the last, 10 years or so. I'm a psychologist. I study how people make decisions. I study the impact of emotions and motivations on decision making and choice and how people behave in everyday life. And I've studied regret for many, many years, envy, greed, but also shame, guilt, pride, hope, many emotions, some positive, some negative. And we've also done some work on the fear of missing out. Fear of missing out, you just saw the video what it is. You also heard them say in the beginning that this is something that is not new, but it's now more prevalent because of social media. It is not new, it has always been around. It has always, I've been shuffling around my slides. I was until like 5 minutes before the talk. I actually had when I came in, I put in a picture of my parents and then I took it out again, but I'm still going to talk about them. My parents are 87, they live in The Hague. And do they experience fear of missing out? I do think so, not because they are on social media all the time, even though they have a joint Facebook account. You know that older people have joint Facebook accounts, so they have one as well. And they make comments below other people's comments, and they don't really know how that works. But that is fine, but they have fear of missing out because they're getting older and they know that stuff will happen when they are not there anymore. And some things that are actually important to them. So my kids, my youngest is 19, my oldest is 27. They will have children, but it's very likely that my parents will not see that anymore. And they might experience some fear of missing out on that, but there's not so much they can do about it. I mean, I can maybe put a financial premium on my kids having children earlier. I'm not sure if they will fall for it, but there's very little they can do about it. I'm mostly interested in the type of fear missing out that drives us to do something. So when I study emotions, when I study motivations, it's not because I'm necessarily interested in how an emotion feels, but I'm more interested in studying an emotion to study what the emotion does, how it sort of drives people's behavior. And we'll talk about fear of missing out later. It is something we see also in the literature. So this is about the motivational, emotional, behavioral correlates of fear of missing out. This has been studied and is studied by psychologists. There are models about it. And if you read the literature, this is one of the definitions that I always thought was an interesting one. FOMO is a pervasive apprehension that others might be having rewarding experiences from which one is absent. FOMO is characterized by the desire to stay continually connected with what others are doing. And many people suffer from it, especially young men in the early literature. So there's some young men here, but also young women and older men. We all might suffer from it a little bit. FOMO can be problematic. It can be problematic, and I teach here at Tilburg University. I also teach at the Free University in Amsterdam, where I am a professor of marketing 1 day a week. And what I notice, what is really different now than, say, like 20 years ago, is that when I teach, people are on their phone all the time. You know, they're always checking what is happening outside of the lecture hall, which I find annoying because I think I'm here, you know, I'm talking to you, pay attention to me, but no, people just want to see what is happening at places where they are not. And that is what FOMO does. You know, the people fear that they miss out on things, and they check their phone continuously. When I wake up, I check my phone. That's one of the first things I do. Not to check the time, because I wake up at 7 every day, but to check, you know, what happened with Donald Trump, for example, or what is happening in the outside world that I'm not part of. So everybody does that, but it can be really interfering with things. You can also sometimes see it when you drive, that you see a car sort of making weird moves, and then you take over and you see that the person is on his phone. So it's bad. It's also bad, FOMO, because if you always worry about things that are happening while you're not present, but that are really nice, it really makes you dissatisfied with who you are, what you are, and where you are. And I was talking earlier today with a colleague of mine, Ziggy Lindenberg, who is 83. And I told him that I was going to talk about FOMO, and he said, yeah, it's really also a big problem in the dating scene nowadays. I said, how do you know that? He said, well, that's a different story. But he said, what happens if you're dating and you're on those apps, you keep on swiping and you see all those people coming by, and it really sort of makes you more dissatisfied with your current partner if you have one, or it raises the bar for a potential partner that might be out there for you. So it hinders relationships, and it also makes you less happy with what you have. If you know, just as in the little clip before, if you continuously think about all the other things you could have been doing, you might be less happy with what you do. So it's problematic, has all sorts of effects. It's not new. So this is a quote from a book by Ronald Gipp. He wrote, for a generation that never experiences anything, ours, it takes very little to become literally horny. For example, we attend a night of poetry every year, only to find out every year that it's utterly boring and shit boring, and yet we, like all those other people, come every year for the fear of missing something. So, you know, we go to parties, we go out in the weekend, we go to I don't know what, because we think it might be really cool, and if we don't go, it's actually maybe more likely that it's cool than if we actually go. And then we go and we think, damn, I should have stayed at home. You know, you get out of bed every day because you think your life is going to be exciting, and you find out at the end of the day you could have stayed in bed. Maybe it was better, I don't know. Jeff Bezos, you'll know the guy, said this in 2001 about starting Amazon.com. I wanted to project myself forward to the age of 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life, I want to have minimized the number of regrets I have. I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I was not going to regret trying to participate in the thing called the internet that I thought was going to be a really big deal. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that, but I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried. I knew that I would have that would have haunted me every day, and so when I thought about it that way, it was an incredibly easy decision. So fear of missing out has to do with the sense of potential regrets in the future that you might miss out on something. So fear of missing out is not just maybe a negative feeling that something might be happening, but it's also a negative feeling that pushes you towards doing all sorts of things in order to prevent this real missing out happening. So the fear is sort of projecting and influencing your future choices. You see it everywhere. So I live in Tilburg, not far from here, burgemeester van Meurstraat. And when I just moved here, I got this letter, you know, in 5037 ND, my postcode. There are now 6 potential winners. 10.2 million will be paid out. Make sure you're there, you know, and then on the back side of the envelope, if the summer whopper of 10.2 million falls in your postcode, will you be standing empty-handed congratulating your winning neighbors? So this is like, they're projecting this fear of me missing out on those prizes that can be won. And, you know, there's one thing you can do about it, is play the postcode lottery. So Rick Peters, my colleague here in the marketing department, and I studied this. We published a paper about it, and we found that anticipated regret, you know, the thoughts about, man, if I don't play, I miss out on this big prize, is a real motivator for people to play in the postcode lottery, but not in the state lottery. So certain elements in the environment may actually arouse a feeling of regret and pushes you to do something. So that is happening. So FOMO, I would actually say, is a form of anticipated regret. Not the FOMO that my parents might feel about not seeing their great-grandchildren, because there's nothing they can do about it, but all the things that we can influence with our choices. If we fear that we might miss out on something, we might actually take action to prevent that from happening. We might anticipate the regret over not doing it and then do it. So regret is important, but one of the things I've been thinking about and that I worried about is, does everybody sort of feel this FOMO to the same extent, or are there people that are more susceptible to this feeling? So who does not want to miss out on a thing? So who is this that is very sort of eager to make sure that they actually get what they want? And then, this is the greed that I refer to about. So the last 10 years we've been thinking a lot about greed, and if you think and read about greed, you see about the goose and the golden eggs, and King Midas, Scrooge McDuck, Gordon Gekko, or Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob SquarePants, all greedy people that always want more and that are never satisfied. And you can imagine that, if you're really always greedy, you always want more, you're also very worried about everything you miss out on. What is happening there that I could be part of and I'm not part of it? So we have been studying greed now for 10, 12 years. And greed is really interesting. If you start studying it, you see it everywhere around you. You see people, you see actually, and so this is one of my favorites. Even between the toes, you see the oranges. If animals show the behavior, then it's really something that is very fundamental. So animals can be greedy, people can be greedy. Greedy about what? Well, maybe about money. And irrespective whether you have a lot of money or a little amount of money, you might still be greedy. So you can be greedy about money, but you can also be greedy about social things, likes on social media. So if you have a lot of likes, more than 30,000, you might still want to have more. And if you have only a few likes, you also want to have more. So it doesn't matter how much you have, never satisfied about getting more. So we start to study greed, and we read about it in the literature. We find out there is no empirical research, but there is lots written about it. The quote from Gordon Gekko: "Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, and greed cuts through and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit." And some people argue greed is good. It leads to economic growth, wealth, innovation, well-being. Economists like to think that, and maybe evolutionary biologists. But there's also lots of people that say that greed is bad, that it leads to the financial crisis, to debts, immoral behaviors. You find this condemned in all religions. And the quote by Gandhi, "There's sufficiency in the world for man's need, but not for man's greed," I think sort of captures what the problem is with greed. There's intrinsically nothing wrong with you wanting more, but the fact that if you want more, other people have less, that is actually what is problematic in greed. So we study that. We study that, and one of the first things how long do I have, by the way?
We still have plenty of time.
Okay. Yeah. I could talk for days. We started studying greed, and we started to find out what it is, and we thought, people differ in how greedy they are. Some people are really greedy, some people are not. And one of the first things we did is we developed a scale to assess individual differences in greediness. Who is a greedy bastard and who is not? And we did it as part of Terry Seuntjes' dissertation research. And the scale we developed has 7 questions. And we asked people, here are 7 statements about you. Please indicate to what extent you agree that these are descriptive of you. I always want more. Actually, I'm kind of greedy. One can never have too much money. As soon as I have acquired something, I start to think about the next thing I want. It doesn't really matter how much I have. I'm never completely satisfied. My life motto is more is better. And I can't imagine having too many things. So these were, we started with, I think, 20 different items and it sort of reduced it to those 7. And those 7 really capture what greedy is, and you can measure how greedy people are. So if you have thought about this, to what you agree with, if you tend to agree with those statements, you might be more greedy than the people sitting next to you. So we developed that scale, and we start doing research with it, and we find actually that, so these are the scores of the scale, plotted on a scale from 0 to 5, the scores from 1 to 5, It's pretty normally distributed. Most people are sort of in the middle. Some people are really greedy. Some people are not as greedy at all. And you find that people vary on it. What we have done, which is interesting, in 2013 we had a sample of about 5,000 people. In 2019 we had a sample of about 2,500. And we found that almost 1,500 people were in both samples. And we found that there was quite a strong relation between how greedy they were in 2013 and 2019. And we just collected a few months ago another, I think, 1,000 people that were also in it. And you see that this greed is stable over time. So the people that are greedy now are still greedy in 5 years and 5 years after that. So it's a trait, it's a part of your personality. So it really is an interesting, stable thing. And it has all sorts of impacts on behavior. So we published this scale in 2015, and if you do that, you know, that is basically what we do. We do research, we write articles, we publish articles, and then you hope that if you publish something that people read it. And most of the time, hardly anybody reads it. Well, that is what science is about. But we published our scale in 2015, and already in, 2018 and 2019, people have read our paper, have translated our scale into Japanese and in Chinese, and have validated, and it works there as well. And then they also did it in Brazilian, and we ourselves did it in Spanish in Colombia. And nowadays, it's also translated into German, it's translated into Russian. Many people use our scale, and there's lots of research going on, which is like, you know, basically the dream of an academic, that when you do something, people actually read it and do something with it. So that's, you know, made us really happy. Now, this is another part of the story. We published our scale, and our article is called Dispositional Greed. And in the same year, 2015, there's 2 Belgian researchers that also published a scale called, an article called Dispositional Greed, and also published a scale that's called the Dispositional Greed Scale. And if you look at the items, they're very similar to our items. That was remarkable. And these were like 2 independent efforts that basically result in this very similar scale. The NRC, the Dutch, one of the Dutch newspapers, thought this was, you know, a waste of money. Why do 2 different groups of people do the same research? But I was extremely happy that it happened because, you know, in the last years within academia, we had a big problem with replication. That people find something and then other people try to replicate it and they couldn't replicate it. And first of all, we develop our scale and people in other countries translate it and find the same results as we do. But we also have here another group of researchers that independently of us try to develop a scale and actually find something that is very similar. That was really interesting. What was also interesting is that they were not the only ones. So in that year, there were 3 others, in those years, 3 other scales that were published. And all of a sudden, there's 5 different greed scales. So one of the things we did is we compared the different greed scales on all sorts of dimensions. They all measure the same thing. So they all correlate very highly. And so I wouldn't say it doesn't really matter which scale you take, so you might as well use ours, because I think that's the best. And that is actually what happened. So people start using our scale. We just published, like this year, because our scale is also the only one that has been translated now to many languages. So dispositional greed can be reliably measured with the dispositional greed scale. There are other greed scales that also assess greed reliably, and this is actually a good thing that the multiple scales do the same thing. Now, greed and missed opportunities. So greed, we have like lots of projects running now on greed, but this is not why you're here. You're here to learn something about FOMO. So we thought greed might also be related to FOMO. You know, greedy people might be more worried about that they miss out on things. So what is happening with FOMO? You know, oh God, what did they do last night? Now, when we look back at these articles studying FOMO, this particular article by Przybylski, I think that's how you pronounce it, they also have a scale where they assess FOMO as a sort of as a trait. Some people suffer more from FOMO than others, and here you can measure FOMO. So one of the questions is, I fear others have more rewarding experiences than me. 2, I fear my friends have more rewarding experiences than me. 3, I get worried when I find out that my friends are having fun without me. 4, I get anxious when I don't know what my friends are up to. So these are all questions about fear of missing out. So, and what we did is we thought, let's see if we can study what factors are associated with this fear of missing out? And then we went back to this definition that I provided you in the beginning. And that definition, if you look at it, FOMO is a pervasive apprehension that others might be having rewarding experiences from which one is absent. And then, we thought the others has to do with also with being envious. So others have something and you don't have that. Then if you don't like that, it's called envy. So we thought envy might be important here. The rewarding experience, we thought that might be related to greed. The greedy people want to have rewarding experiences. So if there's a rewarding experience, doesn't matter if other people have it, I want to have it. And the from one is absent, we thought, that very much stresses the regret part of FOMO. So we did a study with about 300 people via Amazon Mechanical Turk, online study, and we assessed greed with our greed scale. We assessed regret with a regret scale. We assessed benign and malicious envy. And I need to explain that. Envy, the word envy, in English is one word, but in Dutch we have two words for it. Afgunst and benijden. And benijden is called envy as well, but it means somebody has something and I want that as well. You could translate that with benign envy. So that's not harmful but harmless. But there's also malicious envy. Somebody else has something that I don't have and I want to take it away from that person. And that is what we call afgunst in Dutch. So we measure those two and we measure FOMO with that scale. So envy with the benign and malicious envy scale, regret with the regret scale. And then what we find is, basically what we do is we see, have we measured all these things correctly? And you see that these are really reliable. Everything about 0.7 is super reliable. We measure all the constructs reliable. We find that fear of missing out hangs together with all those different predictors. So fear of missing out correlates with greed, with regret, with malicious envy, and with benign envy. And one of the things that you then do is that, okay, this might all hang together, but let's now see if we can actually predict the amount of fear of missing out based on those four predictors, and because maybe those things all measure the same thing. And what you then see is that if you do that independently, because here you correct for all the others, independently, each of these factors have an impact on fear of missing out. So fear of missing out is indeed a complex, overdetermined phenomenon. Overdetermined meaning that there's not one factor influencing it, but there's multiple factors influencing it, all independently. So it's not only that greed has an effect on FOMO, but independently regret and the two types of envy also have an effect on FOMO. So people that are envious of others, people that are regretful with respect to the decisions of people that are greedy, all of them are more likely to experience FOMO. Now, what does that lead us to? FOMO is a pervasive apprehension that others might be having rewarding experiences from which one is absent. FOMO is conceptually similar to those feelings of anticipated regret, or fearing that you might regret not doing something and then pushing you towards doing that. And people high on dispositional greed, envy, and regret are those that are most likely to suffer from fear of missing out. And that is what I have to tell you in a nutshell. And I think there might be some time for questions or not.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Time for questions?
Of course, thank you. Are there any questions in the room? Yeah. Can you take the microphone?
Can you use the microphone?
Greed and regret and also culture determined. Everybody reacts differently to different. For example, I come from South Africa. I was with Africans and Indians and Europeans. Everybody has a different way of mourning, for example. So we have to regret that the uniformity is not universal.
Yeah, no. So that's a good remark. Many of the things that we study as psychologists have a cultural element to it. The research on greed that we are doing is still in its infancy. We have been doing it only a few years. The fact that the scale we developed has been translated into, what is it, Chinese, Japanese, Russian, Spanish, Brazilian Portuguese, German, Dutch, and English, and that we basically replicate findings in those different languages, to me, signifies that at least the concept of greed is something that is out there. For regret, we ran a study many years ago where we collected data in Taiwan, Israel, the United States, and the Netherlands, and we asked people about regret, guilt, and disappointment. And so that was a study that was actually really developed to compare the cultural similarities and differences between those emotions. And what was interesting, what I found interesting there, is that in all those cultures, regret and guilt and disappointment felt the same. So people who feel regret blame themselves, can basically want to kick themselves, they are angry with themselves, so that feels the same. But if you look at the type of decisions that actually lead to regret, there you find interesting cultural differences. So mostly in the US and in Israel, the differences that the decisions that were regretted were very individual decisions, whereas in Taiwan, the decisions were way more social. And this is, of course, also a more less individualistic culture, so there might be sort of those emotions might also be experienced in less individualistic contexts. And the Netherlands was sort of in between those things. So you're totally right that the types of events that might give rise to fear of missing out might be different events in different cultures. But I think that the phenomenon of fear of missing out is a phenomenon that is most likely to be invariant across cultures. So I believe that in all cultures there might be something as fear of missing out, but what people actually fear that they miss out on, I think there the influence of culture is biggest. But you know, this is speculation from my side. We haven't done that research, but we're working on these things to know more and more.
Yes. Any other questions?
You're an economic psychologist, right? So I'm also thinking to that regard about how companies, for example, really play into these feelings of FOMO. I think, in social media, but also in general, when you see advertisements, they're really good at really playing into that. Do you also see that in your research, or can you say something about that as well?
Yeah, so that's a good question for several reasons. One of the reasons is that I think there's a misconception that economic psychology is only about companies. So, you know, I'm also a professor of marketing, and I think marketing is way more about sort of companies and these things. Economic psychology is more, I would say, that part of psychology that tries to understand economic behaviors of people. And that doesn't mean that companies are involved. It can be any spending or saving or decision that we run into. Having said that, many companies exploit feelings of anticipated regret or fear of missing out. I would say the postcode lottery is the prime example. There was a guy who started lobbying for the postcode lottery to be forbidden. Like it was on in the newspaper. I think 2 days ago, he was getting people to sign sort of a petition that they would ban that. About 15 years ago, I did the same call in the newspaper that they should forbid it, because I think the postcode lottery is basically emotional blackmail. So people play that lottery not because they would like to win that much, but mostly because they are afraid that other people win money and they miss out on it. And I think that is not a very nice way to market something. But companies do that, and they also do that, and many events, you know, I was just texting with a colleague. We organized a symposium called the Tilburg Symposium for economics and psychology already for the 21st year this year. And when we opened the conference, we always ask people to tweet about it with the hashtag Tilburg 2025, you know, this year. And of course, that is to sort of arouse in other people, hey, you should have been here. You know, this is what you miss out on, in the hope that then next year more people will come. So that is a trick that people use or abuse, companies, but also conference organizers. And so that can be used. We did a really cool project recently. I think it was published, maybe 4 years ago, where we started a lottery. It's called the Beweegloterij, the movement lottery, where we wanted to help people to exercise more frequently. And we told people, when they signed up to a gym, I said, you can enroll in this program if you want. And then each week we will draw a name out of a big jar. And if your name is drawn and you went to the gym twice, you get a prize. But if your name is drawn and you didn't go to the gym twice, we tell you, but you will not get a prize. So it was basically the same setup as the postcode lottery, but then in order to get people to go to the gym more often. And that actually helped people to stick to their plans to go to the gym. So we have done that, we've published some work on it, and we're now actually running a similar lottery to help people to stop smoking. And so what you see is that this type of lottery incentives, so even though I complain about the postcode lottery, I think the same setup can be used for good in other types of situations. The big difference is that if we use it for either weight loss or for going to the gym or for people to stop smoking, we ask people whether they want to enroll in that lottery or not. And in the postcode lottery, everybody is enrolled because everybody has a postcode. So you cannot unenroll. You cannot say, I want my postcode not to participate in the postcode lottery. So yes, those things are used by companies and sometimes in a way that I would say is not so ethical.
Are there any other questions?
I have a mic, so that's easy. So you had a post with different like greed and envy and regret, going to FOMO, and is it a correlational study or a causal study?
It's a correlational study. So what we do is we measure how, whether you are a person who is greedy, whether you are a person who is likely to feel regret or being envious. These things also hang together to some extent. And we find that people that score high on those scales are also people that feel FOMO more often. We cannot draw a causal conclusion there, but I would say the opposite is less likely. That if you feel FOMO, you become a greedy person. So there is some indication that the causal direction is the way we suggested this, but of course there's no causal proof for it.
Because of the personality.
It's a personality study, yeah. I slowly moved from, I was first a cognitive psychologist, then I became a social psychologist, then I became an economic psychologist, and now I start studying personality. Yeah. It's called life. It happens.
Well, thank you, Marcel.
Thank you.
Another round of applause for Marcel. Thank you so much. And then I want to invite Lennard Toma to the stage. He is also a psychologist, of course, but he started his studies in international business. He switched eventually to work at organizational psychology, and he now has his own practice, I think, yeah. He wrote 3 books and has a lot of podcasts, one of which saved my personality disorders exam, so thank you for that. Yeah, have a round of applause for Lennard Toma.
Thank you. I'll get my clicker on. Do I have to? You have to switch? It's the other slides. All right. Yeah. So nice to be here. So Marcel already gave a great introduction about FOMO, so I'm going to try and not do the same thing and do it from a little bit of a different perspective, I hope. So I'm a psychologist as well, so I have my own practice. And in my practice, I do this kind of dynamic psychotherapy. So what I'm going to do is try to look at it from more of a therapist perspective of what FOMO is, I think, and what it can do to you, etc. And I think what was nice, and the organizers put it well together, that Marcel talked about a lot of the consequences of when you have FOMO. So I'm going to try, and he mentioned some of maybe the causes, but I'm going to try to do a dynamic kind of psychodynamic kind of thing about the causes of FOMO. At least I'm going to try. So bear with me. So what is FOMO? We already mentioned it, and this was another thing that I saw was that missing out on something fundamentally important to you that others are experiencing. So that you are feeling that it's really, really important to be there, or you should be there, or you should have those things. That what's create the FOMO or the fear that you have. So what does it do? We already mentioned some of the things, right? So envy, it's already talked about. And I already have some kind of psychodynamic terms behind those, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit more later. So self-attack and projection, you can keep that in mind. Of course, sometimes you have this helpless feeling also when you have FOMO. So why am I not there? Why can't I be there? Why can't I get out of bed? Or why do I have, you know, this time-consuming things that I have that I don't get to be at the party or whatever, you know, stuff like that. So there's a kind of helpless feeling that arises as well when you have this type of FOMO. Another thing that's really happening, I think, a lot with people as well, is that you get to ruminate. You go on social media, you're going to think about a lot of why am I not there, or I should be there, of course. So there's this overthinking of the things that you want to have and that you don't get to do. And another thing that happens is that, and I think it could happen in the long run, is that you get more anxious, of course. It's a fear, so there's anxiety going on. If that happens a lot, then, you know, it can spiral down into having more anxiety. So a lot of times what happens when people have certain anxiety and feel anxiety in their bodies is when they go out to certain things and they carry this anxiety with them, they kind of, you know, kind of think that other things will make them anxious as well, instead of the thing that causes the anxiety in the first place. So for instance, if I see a snake and, you know, I get a scare and there's this nice pedestal with the laptop here, then maybe next time when I see the laptop and the same kind of pedestal, I have the same scared reaction, right? But there's no snake then. But this kind of anxiety, when it's high, you have this in all kinds of different situations as well. But it can also make you depressed because, you know, you scroll on social media, everybody kind of knows that social media kind of makes you depressed after a certain while because they are at Bali or they have this great party or, you know, they're all those, the diving, the cliff diving that we saw. I don't know if you want to do that, but yeah, maybe some of you do. So then you think, missing out on that, I don't have that. And then maybe I'm a stupid person, and this kind of thing goes into your head maybe a little bit and makes you depressed after a certain while. And that distancing thing is an interesting thing, I think, as well, which can sometimes happen. So if you're feeling that anxious feeling or that depressed feeling or that self-attack kind of mode when you're in that, is that sometimes you kind of go back to bed and keep the covers over your head and stop going out anymore. And so you distance yourself from certain people. It could also mean that if you have this fear of missing out, oftentimes what you can think is that, well, if I then show up to my friends, I cannot join the conversation anymore because they had certain experiences that I did not, and then I will be a bit of a party pooper, so maybe they won't like me, so maybe I will not go to the next event, because then they will talk with their group and I'm not in that, so it's gonna have, makes me feel more anxious, so I'm gonna distance myself even further, and that can lead to, a feeling of being alone and feeling alone basically. So you don't want that, of course. Okay, that basically what it does, and of course Marcel talked about it already. But what are some of the causes? Of course, these are the obvious causes, the stimuli that actually make you go and have this fear of missing out, already talked about as well. So all the social media, you have so many possibilities right now, not only the events that you can do, that you can join, the different studies that you can follow. I mean, back in the day, I don't know, in Marcel's time maybe, and a little bit maybe before my time, there weren't so many different study possibilities that you can have. Now you have way more. I don't know if you know this, Barry Schwartz, another psychologist, talks about the paradox of choice. I don't know if you heard this, but he says, well, if you ask people, okay, do you want you want to choose between 20 different types of olive oil or 3 types of olive oil? Everybody will say, well, I want to have the 20 different types of olive oil where I can choose from. I want to go to the supermarket that has many possibilities. And that seems like fair because you get a feeling of autonomy and freedom that you can have these different choices, right? But actually, when you look at when people do make a choice and they choose from the 20 different kinds, they're less satisfied than when they get to choose from the 3 different kinds. Why? Because there were 19 other possibilities that could have been better instead of just 2. So it makes you feel more unhappy when you choose from the 20 different types. But everybody wants the 20 different types of olive oil, and sometimes I think in certain supermarkets there's way more. I think like sometimes there's 100 or something. So it's not only in products, of course, but it's also in relationships now where you can slide through Tinder and like Marcel already said, then you get dissatisfied about your life, right? And about your relationships. You could have better friends, you could have a better partner, all kinds of stuff. Okay. And they all look so good, right? Because at social media, they kind of highlight it and they make it seem more nice and they make it seem like everything's great at Bali, even though sometimes maybe a cyclone comes over and destroys the whole thing. I don't know. I've never been to Bali, so I don't know. But yeah, they make it seem look so good, right? So you want to have that even more. And there's this kind of thing in society right now that says, well, you are in charge of your own happiness. And you get, if you are not happy right now, it's basically your fault. You could do more, right? It's a makeable or, you know, you can make your own happiness type of society. If you're not happy, it's your own fault. It has nothing to do with social media or other things that are happening in your life. It's you. And so that's what we kind of get to know and hear in all these kind of different social media as well, and YouTube, where they say, well, make your own happiness and you can be happy, etc. And you can be rich. So if you're not rich, you're basically a failure, right? But if you look at it economically, maybe, I don't know, I'm not an economic psychologist, but yeah, maybe the one thing, there's this economist that I like to follow, is called Gary Stevenson. He says if you want to get really rich in this day and age, there's one thing that you need to do, it's to have a rich dad. If you not have a rich dad, well, good luck to you, basically. So there's this thing that we think we can have it all, but there's some limitations as well, but the feeling that we can have it all, it kind of makes us give that FOMO, right? And here we go to the more psychodynamic type of thing. There are some defenses or coping mechanisms that you have that are at work that makes you more prone to having feelings of FOMO. And we're going to talk about them a little bit. So let's have a kind of a therapy session. So when someone comes into my practice, and he or she will say, well, I have a lot of problems with FOMO. I think I have a lot of fear of missing out. I'm going to do certain types of questions. I'm going to ask them all kinds of questions, of course. And so one of the first things, of course, is doing the inquiry. I have to know what's beneath this FOMO. Because FOMO is kind of, in my opinion, more of a superficial kind of thing. And there's lots of that in the bottom. So one type of question I might ask is, all right, so when you have FOMO, what happens? What happens to you? Do you get anxious? Or do you feel something in your body like, I don't know, maybe your stomach gets into a knot, or you get some type of headache, or you want to stay indoors, or you want to go out, or what kind of things happen when you feel this FOMO coming up? So that's really interesting to me to get to know, and also eventually, of course, for the client. What's the worst that could happen? So this is a type of question where we get to say, okay, so if you don't go, and if you often miss out on things, what is the worst that could happen to you subjectively? Not objectively, because sometimes you kind of rationalize, especially you smart people, you kind of know, well, of course, nothing really happens when I'm not there at the party, and my friends will still like me, but I get the feeling that they won't like me, or that I will be missing out and not be part of the group anymore, that they kind of reject me. So the rejection sometimes is probably most important to you. You don't want to get rejected from your peers or your group or whatever tribe you're in. So this is kind of this is a survival mechanism, of course, because you want to keep being in the tribe. So the rejection part is really a big thing. And it's good to know that being rejected is sometimes maybe the underlying real fear that's there. And sometimes it could be another thing, right? Maybe not rejection, but I don't know, then it's oftentimes probably rejection, but you know, it could be different kinds of things that, well, I think I'm going to be stupid when I'm not there or something, so it's going to be more of a self-attack. But always underlying, it's oftentimes the attachment thing that is bothering people. I'm going to ask, when did this start? Because maybe you didn't have it when you were in high school, and sometime during college it started happening or rising up. Maybe you had some in high school, but it's going to be interesting when you notice that the fear of missing out was getting worse. Because then we get to certain things that maybe underlie that stimuli to make it grow more. Maybe you have some already, but now it went to a different level. What happened when this started, right? Because then we get to have more knowledge about what the underlying cause is. And also, what's a recent example? And oftentimes, when some people say, for instance, well, when did this start? Well, I've had a situation where I wasn't at a certain festival or something, and afterwards I went back to my friends, and they kind of huddled. They were going to the festival, and afterwards, when I saw them, they were talking quite, you know, lively about the festival and stuff, and I couldn't talk with them, and I was kind of left out. You know, they were kind of huddled up in a group, and I was kind of on the side, so like the fifth wheel on the wagon or whatever, and I didn't feel I fit in anymore. And so I think they didn't like me anymore. All right. So then I go and ask, what are the feelings towards them for making you feel left out a little bit? And oftentimes when I've asked this question, it gets a little bit tricky to the clients in front of me, because what do you feel towards others is often a really, or sometimes maybe a weird question or a hard question for them to answer. So they can give me all kinds of things or examples or things that they're going to say that kind of moves them away from what they actually feel and go instead of in more of the defenses type of work. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So what I'm actually looking for is this thing. So in the therapist class, or whatever, how you see in the practice, we look at the thing called the triangle of conflict. And so at the bottom you have your deeper hidden feelings oftentimes, so subconscious or unconscious feelings that are there. You don't sometimes notice them, sometimes you do, but there are deeper lying feelings like anger or pain or sadness or grief, and sometimes also positive emotions. So sometimes I have clients that don't feel their positive emotions, or they cannot feel them because they are afraid they're going to be disappointed if they feel them even more, right? And if you have certain emotions that you cannot feel because you have certain convincing thoughts about, well, I cannot be angry because then maybe I will hurt someone, or it's not a nice emotion to have. Or if you love someone and you're angry at them, those types of emotions can conflict, and then you have a kind of a problem. So what you do to cover up those emotions and not feel them is have all kinds of defenses. So different patterns, different coping mechanisms to kind of stop and block those hidden emotions. If you use those things to cover those emotions up, you get anxiety in your body. Anxiety, fear, stress, we kind of see them as the same thing. It's kind of a physical response to a sudden danger that is there. The danger can be from outside, so from the snake, or it could be from within a certain emotion that is coming up. And if you don't feel the emotion, you get this anxiety feeling, and then you have all kinds of different defenses that are or discharging certain of those that anxiety, or that you have different patterns that cover it up. Okay, so this sounds maybe a little bit vague, but I go into them, right? So the feelings and the healthy ones, like I said, is the deeper lying thing that we have. It basically, your deeper lying feelings basically tell you what you want and what you don't want. That's, if you, in a nutshell, and probably Marcel has maybe some different definitions on it, but in a very simple sense, I do not want this clicker to fall down, so that's my emotion coming up right now. But it's basically like a compass, right? So it says, well, I don't like this and I do like that. I don't like people leaving me out of the group, so maybe I get a little bit angry. Or I don't want to miss someone, you know, leaving me, so I get a little bit sad, or a little bit tearful, or a little bit how do you say, and grief that comes up. Or you have a positive emotion which is more engaging, right? I want more of this. This is nice. I like this. This gives me hope, or this gives me a pleasurable feeling. I want more of this, right? So you have all kinds of feelings and healthy ones. And if those get blocked or whatever, so you get this anxiety, right? And anxiety, we see it in 3 different types of forms. And before I go into those, maybe I want to have a little bit of an example of how you can feel the anxiety. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to point out one of you with my eyes closed, and if there's some empty seats, so if I'm pointing at an empty seat, then maybe the person next to you is you're next to the empty seat. I will say that you will be the one that I choose. And if I choose you, you can come up here to the front, and it's kind of a connecting way of what I want to do, is that you share the thing that you are most ashamed about. So you can think about it right now, and I'm going to choose one of you to come up and talk about the things that you are most ashamed about, right? So I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to point out. So think already about something that you're ashamed about. It's not, we're all here kind of psychologists right now, so it's fine. I'm a psychologist and a therapist, so it's not really bad to say something what you're most ashamed about, right? All right, so I'm not going to choose any one of you, but what did you feel? Yeah? Yeah, you don't want me pointing at you, right? Right, you don't want me pointing at you right now, yeah. So who had some type of anxiety right now? A little bit? Yeah, right, right. Who thinks I'm an asshole right now? All right. So the person that felt some of the anxiety, what did you feel? What are some physical sensations that you felt right now?
I think your heart rate goes up.
Heart rate goes up, yes. What else? Something in your chest, what kind of? Tightening in your chest, right. What else? Any other sensations? Yeah. Sense of your own positioning in the room, yeah. Sweating, yes, yes, yeah.
Weird feeling in the stomach.
Weird feeling in your stomach, right, right, yeah. Visualizing the whole scene, right, right, right. So you're already thinking about what is coming next, right? Who was already thinking about what they were going to say or how they were going to say it, right? A little bit, right? Yeah. So all kinds of things come up when I'm kind of being an asshole and saying that you have to say something about what you're ashamed about. I kind of did this. I had a lecture at a high school with 5 VWO and 5 HAVO, so they were 17 or something. And I said, and it was a big full house, and I said, okay, I'm going to close my eyes, and one of you can come up and sing karaoke with me. You can choose the song, we're going to sing together. And so I was having my eyes closed and pointing, and afterwards I heard from the teachers that all of them were ducking as soon as my finger crosses them. So, and when I said, well, I'm not going to choose any one of you, this was a joke, I heard this big sigh, right? So you probably had that a little bit as well. But it's interesting what happens in your body when you feel anxious. And it's really important to kind of know what happens in your body when you feel anxious. So we differentiate into 3 different types of groups. And it's kind of like, we say it in green, orange, red, so like a stop light. So the first one is in your voluntary muscles. So your fight-flight system goes up, so your somatic pathways goes up, right? So there's a bear or a snake coming up, and your muscles tighten. So the tightness in your chest could be a little bit about that. Some people, squeeze their abdomen or, shaky leg. It's all voluntary muscles. Some people have their shoulders when they are stressed come up, right? And, tightness in the neck. You see some people rubbing their hands. Also sighing is a sign of stress or tension or anxiety in the body. It's the intercostal muscles between your ribs. So I can sigh whenever I want to, but I'm gonna kind of involuntarily sigh when I'm having anxiety, right? Or, rub my hands together. So we call this in the green zone. Why? Because if you're in therapy, it's kind of good to be in the green zone. If you have no tension or anxiety at all, we're just talking about some random stuff that are not really important. So you need to have some tension to improve, to change. So a little bit of tension is okay. And when you're in the green zone, then you can think normally and you can have access to your deeper lying emotions. But of course, if you walk around like this for like 3 days, eventually it's gonna hurt. So it's not really nice to have a lot of tension for a long time in those voluntary muscles, but this is one thing. And of course, why is it there? Fight or flight mode, your muscles get activated to fight off the bear. I don't know if that's really handy. I don't know if you've seen The Revenant. Don't fight the bear, but you want to run or you want to fight the snake, whatever. So fight flight mode gets engaged, right? So then you have orange. It's also fight flight, but it's more on the insides of your body. So of course your whole body is basically consists of pipelines, you know, your blood vessels, your urinary tract, your whole digestive system. It's all kind of tubes. Those tubes have muscles themselves as well. We call them the smooth muscles because if you look at the cells, they're kind of like smooth looking, and they can contract. And so what you felt when the stomach goes, I don't know if you said it, like you felt it in your stomach. If your stomach gets into a knot, that's basically your stomach, you know, squinting a little bit. Why does that happen? Well, of course, the fight or flight mode goes on. You don't have anything to do when the bear comes running towards you. It's nice that you can digest your food, but you don't have any use for it right now. You have to run, or maybe stand still and scare the bear. I don't know how it works. I've never met a bear. But you don't have any, you know, your digestive thing, it doesn't make sense, so it gets shut off. Also what you can have, some people report like migraines or headaches. Why? Because their blood vessels in your head contract, and that's also, you know, all the pipelines contracting your head, and then you get a headache. Why do they contract? Because you need more blood to your muscles. So if they are a little bit smaller, there's more pressure on them, and they can get more blood into your muscles to fight or flight. So this happens. When this happens, oftentimes, and it gets maybe also like the tightness in your chest, sometimes the pressure or something, that can also a little bit be the same thing in the orange side. It's all involuntary. I cannot, you know, and the lump in your throat when you're getting sad, it's the same thing. Sweatiness. I cannot control, maybe one of you can, but I cannot say, oh, right, now I want to have a lump in my throat, or now I want to sweat, and then I don't go sweating. So this is going involuntarily as part of your sympathetic nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, and the sympathetic part of your autonomic nervous system. It goes automatically. You don't have any control over it. But what you can do to minimize or lower it is when you have focus your attention on that spot. So if you feel the knot in your stomach, what really helps, oftentimes you want to run away from it, right? Like, I don't want to feel this feeling because it's not nice. But if you go towards it with your attention, oftentimes it goes down. Because basically what this alarm system is telling, it's like a guy ringing a bell, there's danger! And when you do like this, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to see it, I want to run away from this anxiety, the dude with the bell is going to ring harder because you're not paying attention to it. So if you pay attention to it, oftentimes it helps. What I often see in the therapist room is then people sigh, and then I know they're back in green, and then we can explore the emotions again. So sighing is basically a sign that oftentimes you go from one stage to the green stage again. So that's orange. And then you have red, which is kind of a weird one because we call this cognitive perceptual disruption. And you guys kind of know it as a blackout. So when you're doing a presentation and your brain feels foggy, or you get this tunnel vision or blurriness in front of your eyes, some people get like ringing in their ears. Basically what happens is, your brain kind of shuts down. And then you think, all right, in an evolutionary perspective, why does this happen? Because if the bear is running towards you, a blackout is pretty stupid to have, right? But this actually happens at kind of the last minute, because when he's chomping on you or biting you and eating you, your body basically wants to shut down. So this is the final moment, basically. So if you're having a blackout, basically your body is saying, I'm getting eaten right now. This is how much anxiety you're going to feel. And blurry vision, blurry thinking, and your ears kind of go ringing because you don't want to feel it. You produce more endorphins, so you get what we see in the practice room is that the people's faces kind of go limp a little bit, like soggy, because they get a little bit anesthesia. I don't know. They get a bit sedated, basically. So everything slacks off. So that's really interesting. It's a freeze mode or a flop mode or however you want to call it, but it's you get the switch into the parasympathetic. So if you heard the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system thing, oftentimes they say the parasympathetic nervous system part is when you are relaxed. That's true. But it's also when you are very highly stressed. It's the same. And then the same thing kind of happens, but in a different kind of way. You let things loose. So sometimes you pee in your pants or whatever. Stuff like that happens. And you go limp, right? So what happens if you have this, if you go into a blackout, there's one thing that you can do as well, and it's nice if you notice, of course. So if you have a little bit of blurry vision or the ringing in your ears goes up, or your thinking goes a little bit foggy, paying attention to that can help as well. If that doesn't help, what we oftentimes do in the practice is we let people like squeeze their muscles or do a few squats, basically. Because that tells the brain, I'm not in the mouth of the bear, I can still move my limbs, please let me go back to green. And then the brain is like, oh, that's nice. And then there's a big sigh oftentimes, and they're back to green. So of squeezing your muscles really hard together, it gets you out of a blackout. So tip for that one. So this can happen also, of course, maybe when the FOMO is really, really high, then you feel this anxiety. And it's really important to notice these things, because then you can do something about them, right? And then you have all kinds of defenses that are kind of blocking you from having those emotions, and oftentimes can probably lift up the FOMO even more if you let them around loose, basically. So you have a lot of like gazillion types of defenses, so I'm going to go through a few of them, which I think are interesting and kind of related. So you have things like rationalization. So if I ask the person that was kind of left out, right, from the group when the group was going to a festival, and I say, okay, what do you feel towards the group now, or towards your friends for leaving you out? And they're not reporting an emotion to me, but they're going to say things like, well, of course, they were there at the festival and I wasn't, so it's logical that they're going to talk about it and I'm not, so I kind of understand. Well, that's a rationalization. So you kind of block your own emotion by rationalizing over it and not going to the emotion when I ask you to, right? So that's one way of covering the emotion that will not help you in the long run. A little bit of rationalization is fine, but not if it's that much. You can have a self-attack. So if I say, well, what do you feel towards the group? And you say, well, I think they're angry at me. Right? It's kind of a projection, and maybe you can say, well, I think I'm stupid, then it's a self-attack. So those are both of the things. So if you say, well, I'm stupid for not going, I'm lazy, I should have gone, well, you're self-attacking right now instead of feeling your feelings towards the other person. That can really harm you and can get you depressed eventually. You can project it like saying, well, they're angry at me, or you can project your self-attack. They probably think I'm stupid for not going, so now I'm not going towards them, and then you feel left alone, right? And it can make you lonely. Another thing you can do is act out. So, oh, what do you feel towards them? Oh, I really wanted to hit them, or I want to curse, or I went, a little bit berserk when they were in the group. Well, that's not really feeling your feelings. It's more, lashing out and kind of discharging your anxiety. So oftentimes we say things like, well, that person was really angry, but more like in an aggressive sense. And we kind of differentiate that with real anger, which is more calm and controlled and more defensive. And if you're acting out, it's more like, you're a cat driven in a corner. In Dutch they say this. And then you kind of lash out at people. Then it's kind of like an acting out response and discharging of the stress that you feel. You can do that in all different types of ways. Some people cry when they want to discharge the anxiety, and they say, I'm sad. So if like a boyfriend and a girlfriend are having an argument and they're getting into a fight, and then oftentimes the girl sometimes cries and they say, well, I'm sad. No, you're not sad. You're probably mad at the person, but now the tears stream down your eyes because you felt some type of anxiety coming up, because you didn't want to feel the emotion of anger. Why? Because you're maybe afraid that he's going to leave you when you're angry. And if that's a hard type of emotion for you to feel, then it gets a little bit shut down. And kind of guys, maybe, not want to generalize, but guys have maybe in the opposite direction when they feel sadness because maybe their mother died or something, and I'm a tough guy and I don't want to cry. Then oftentimes they go and punch maybe some things that's acting out their anxiety for not feeling their sadness. or their grief, right? You can ruminate, so thinking a lot in your bed about all different types of things and not really go to sleep anymore. Well, that's not really helpful. This is an interesting one. A lot of people do a sort of thing where they sometimes comply and defy when they don't want to feel the emotion. So they'll say to me when they're in the therapist room, yeah, I feel the feeling. And in the meantime, I kind of see them do this, like stick their middle finger up to me in their head, basically, like they're trying to go with me, but at the same time, they're defying everything I say because they don't want to believe me or something, or don't want to go with me. And that's also a type of defense that often young people have. So when I get like 16-year-olds, they're mostly agreeing with everything I say, and then I ask, do you actually feel something, or do you just agree with me what I'm saying? And they're saying, yes, no, I feel everything, yeah, and I don't see anything. I'm really mad right now, but they don't show any madness or anger at all. So, okay. You can externalize, of course. Well, it was my dog that kept me from going out, so now I'm mad at the dog or whatever. You can devalue. Now, the festival wasn't really that great, and my friends are stupid as well. Well, you kind of devalue your friends right there instead of feeling your emotions. You can feel helpless. Well, it's always me. I'm not, I'm so sad I cannot go to the festival, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's another way to remove your anger. And you can displace. So if instead of being angry towards your friends for leaving you out, maybe you kick the dog, right? So, because, yeah, stupid dog, right? Instead of just feeling your anger. And so there are many types of defenses. These are only a few of them, but it's really necessary for you to look at them for yourself. What kind of defenses do you have? You can just push people away, or you can be in the helpless position or a passive position. Well, people need to invite me, then that's the only reason that I will come. Well, that's a passive position, and you never really get invited, and you push people away in that sense as well. And why are these things happening, and how do you develop these defenses? It's oftentimes when you have a conflict between attachment and authenticity. So you probably heard of the physician Gabor Maté. He's a pretty famous Canadian-Hungarian physician who talks about this all the time. He's a trauma expert, and he always says, well, if you're in your childhood and you are feeling angry, what do you think most of the parents do when the child is angry for not getting a cookie, for instance? The child is crying and banging their fists on the floor. What does the parent do oftentimes? Ignore them, right? What else? Give them the cookie anyway. Give them the cookie anyway, yes, that's another one, yeah. Yeah. What else? Sometimes they send them to the room, yeah?
Yeah, they can reprimand.
Reprimand, right. So if a child feels anger oftentimes for not getting a cookie, oftentimes they get sent away or be ignored or whatever. What actually gives a signal to the child that, oh, when you're angry, we don't want you in our tribe or in our family. And then the child gets, a part of them is not getting the unconditional love that they really need at the moment. So they have a need for attachment, of course, and actually it's, of course, necessary for survival to attach to your parents because they're the caretakers. And if you go back into the wild and your parents will say, well, get out, you're no longer part of the family, well, you have kind of, one day to live, basically. So you really need to be in touch with your parents and attach to them and not lose sight of them. So you will use everything in your power, unconsciously, of course, to not get rid of that bond. So you remove your authenticity for being angry, you push that down, and you create all kinds of defenses on top of that, so you can push it down even further and keep it there. And so you will self-attack, or you will project, or you will comply, or you will defy, or whatever you're going to do, you're going to try to keep the attachment going and drop your own authenticity. And then when you grow up, and you go to college or university or you go and work, then oftentimes people will wonder, who am I? And I have these all kinds of weird feelings and I don't know what to do with them. And sometimes I think I'm angry or I don't know, or stuff happens and I would get really sad or get really anxious, etc., etc. And then they come into the therapist office to talk about it. And so we kind of relearn them to what it is to feel anger. And so what the proper response actually is to your kids. So if you have kids already, or you're going to have kids maybe in the future, what a proper response probably is to your child is when they feel angry because they don't get the cookies, not giving them the cookie, of course. But you say, okay, you can be angry, I still love you, I'm gonna hug you, but you cannot hit, or you cannot curse, or whatever, but you can be angry, you can feel your anger, and I will still love you for it. It's fine, but you cannot get the cookie. I do this with my children, at least I try it. It doesn't oftentimes work, because sometimes they're very much a pain in the ass. But I try to be as loving as possible, because it's just part of them. It's an emotion that they have, and it's just a part of human nature if you have those emotions. And it's really necessary that you love them for it, because then they will feel the unconditional love that they can give to themselves afterwards as well when they grow up, instead of just having a conditional form of love that they grow up with. And then you get these types of fears because you think, well, I'm not attached to the group anymore. I'm not attached to my friends anymore. I need to go out of my way and go to every event that's there in order to feel the attachment again and feel some type of love from my friends. And it goes way back to your childhood, that you didn't feel the love when you felt angry, for instance, or when you were sad, that you get sent to your room instead of being okay with it, right? So, and I think parents do love their children unconditionally in like 99.999% of the cases, but it's just the perception of the child that feels that they're not unconditionally loved when they feel certain kinds of emotions that gets them into trouble later on. And it's really interesting and important to know, especially in combination to the FOMO thing, because it's probably something that is one of the things that goes on top of that you want to feel the attachment with your friends, and you want to feel some attachment that you need, that you have a kind of a hole in your heart that you kind of try to fill all the time with all the things that you want to go to and don't regret things about, right? So then you see this triangle a little bit better. Then I hope that you have these feelings and the defenses come on top and you feel the anxiety in the different types of forms, in the green, orange, and red, which stops you from having those true feelings and truly connect with yourself and then connect with others as well. So I think for FOMO, probably those four will come up a lot beneath the FOMO thing. So if I do the inquiry in the therapy session and ask them a lot about it, oftentimes these types of defenses will probably show up. They're probably ruminating, they're probably feeling helpless. Sometimes they will project out, they're gonna hate me if I'm not there, or I'm gonna be a sad or a silly person or a stupid person if I'm not there. That's probably what happens when the FOMO arises. So if we can address those and see where those come from, then we have something to do about it, right? So how do you get rid of your defenses? Well, you can try to always go into the sweet spot of what I need to do and what I want to do, but it's oftentimes really, really hard, right? So you can find a working place where you need to do something for yourself. Oftentimes when you look at self-attack, if you say, I need to do this, oftentimes, or in Dutch, ik moet, if you say that word a lot, it probably means you're self-attacking a lot, right? Instead of, I want to do this. I want to feel this, or I want to do this thing. No, you need to go there, then probably self-attack is in the place. So you want to try sometimes to go into the sweet spot, but that is not, it's a small part of your life that you can have that. It's nice if you can have more of that, but it's often hard to find. So you need some other things to get rid of your defenses. So what we do is we, first of all, try to identify the defense first of all, because the defenses are the things that are sitting in the way of you being happy. So know the defenses that you have and know the anxiety that it gives you and all the types of ways you can see your anxiety. Identify the defense first. Then know the costs and the benefits, because it has some benefits. It's kind of like, you can see every defense, for instance, rationalization or self-attack, as a kind of a life vest. If you're in the ocean and it's a normal life vest, you kind of float around and it's fine and you don't drown. But if it gets blown up and it's, surrounding you, you're still floating on the ocean, but you suffocate in your own defense. And then it's no longer helpful. And that kind of happens when you grow up sometimes. It's going to be a little bit too big for you, and then you cannot handle it anymore. So know what the benefits are as well, because it wants to protect you from something. Namely, it wants to protect you from being isolated, not being in the group. So you will harm yourself first in order for you to be okay within the group, for instance, right? So if you know those things, you can, and know the cost of it, then sometimes the costs are weighing out more than the benefits, and you can mentally get rid of them a little bit. Then you have to stand up against your defense, and then you want to choose and feel. So this is a really hard part to explain with you without you being in the therapy session. But when I sit with a client across from me and I ask them, so how do you feel towards those friends of yours that are excluding you out of the conversation, you will probably feel some anger. But first what you will do is you will go with the defenses, right? Well, I'm stupid or blah, blah, blah. You go into all those type of answers. And so if you can see those things that you are doing, you will say, oh, I want to self-attack now. Oh, I want to rationalize now. Oh, I want to laugh it away. Or I feel like I want to cry it out a little bit. If you can notice those things, you can kind of choose to not do them and then start getting the feeling more. And then oftentimes you feel this anger coming up in your body, and then you will have a different type of experiences with this emotion. And that oftentimes heals a lot. And then your body gets to know, this is how it feels to have this feeling. I don't need the defenses anymore to stop me from having this feeling. And then you will feel a lot better. So remember, there's something beneath the FOMO. And if you can find out, you'll probably be a happy person. Thank you.
Of course, we also have it's some time for you to answer some questions. Yeah. So are there any questions here in the room?
Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering, since I thought it was very interesting that women cry more than when they're angry, and men lash out or...
Right.
Do you think that's like a nature-nurture thing? Or why is it that women cry more? Is it because, yeah.
Yeah, so there are, of course, I have a lot of men in my practice as well that do the crying more often than they feel the anger. And I have certain women that act out more, so, scream or punch or shout or, I don't know, want to kick the chair, for instance, instead of feeling their real anger. And I think it's probably a little bit, maybe, I think it's more of a society thing that women don't get to be in this aggressive mode. It's not really, it's kind of frowned upon if they go in that position, for instance. But if they cry, it's more accepted in a sort of way. And we see that with boys a little bit on the other end. Although we see this more aggressive side, maybe you know this as well a little bit, there's more of an aggressive tendency for boys, with the rough and tumble play, or, being more physical is more of a boy kind of thing. So there's a little bit of nature, a little bit of nurture, I think, in both of those cases. But yeah, oftentimes you see those things come up a little bit more with women in the crying department and more with the acting out in the men department. But yeah, it's not necessarily black and white, of course.
Yes. There's another question right there.
Hello, I wrote a thesis about this, so I was going to
nice.
More about attention studies. So my question is going to be more systematic, because I in the most of the research that fear of missing out is actually a conclusion of the technologies and the social media and the smartphones and increased time of increased screen times. And my question would be in the era of surveillance capitalism, where they are trying to increase our screen time, and this leads to overstimulation of because of the news. There are the fire in Australia, earthquake in Turkey, people get overstimulated by all these news, yeah. And it is causing them anxiety as well. Yeah. And my question would be wouldn't going into therapy room and saying that, yeah, you have to do this, that, to be able to overcome that. But there's an entire system designed for them to look at their phones and the sanctifying notifications, sanctifying screen time, and they remain anxious. Yeah. And they always feel overwhelmed. So wouldn't be putting them in the therapy room and saying that, oh, you can deal with this, causing cruel optimism, for a systematic problem?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that going to a therapist and talking about the defenses that you have and feeling your feelings underneath will make you a better person and stronger person in the face of those types of, how do you say that? They kind of lure you in, of course, the whole time. You know, they're kind of deceptive, or they're, you know, attractive in a certain sense. And they're attractive to people that are kind of, you know, sometimes missing something, right? And feeling that they have a little bit of a hole in their heart, and they're more prone probably to doom scroll, or if they are more anxious from themselves, they'll probably do. I feel it with myself. When I'm more stressed, I'm more on my phone. So if you can counteract that a little bit with just feeling okay with yourself already, maybe you will doom scroll less. And of course, you have a big point there that an individual cannot shape the, you know, you're mainly influenced by the context and the society that you're in, of course. So yeah, we need to do something as a government probably as well to kind of stifle down a little bit of the social media influence that is there. But as an individual, yeah, you can only do so much. But it's not bad to work on yourself, to have some protective feeling and that you are okay with yourself and not having the feeling that you are missing out on things and will regret your life and stuff like that. That you can be okay with whatever you have. So there's probably a two-way street there, that one way you can, you know, society has to change, and the other way, I think it's good to look into yourself, understand yourself a little bit better, and love yourself a little bit more. Never bad.
Okay, great. I think it's time to invite the panel to the podium. Okay, great. We have a new face here because we have a student perspective as well. So, Lisanne, can you maybe introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lisanne. I'm a student here. I study art and media studies. And I also get a lot of FOMO all of the time. I'm kind of known for it with my friends as well, that they're like, oh, well, your FOMO probably wouldn't be able to handle not coming to an event. So yeah, this is a really interesting subject for me.
Great. Let me first start with asking you if you have any questions for each other. Or did you already ask them?
So how do you experience the FOMO?
I get it. Whenever I miss something because I have to work or because I can't do it because I have something else and all my friends are going to this party or this festival or this event, and the feeling that they're having a good time together without me, it really bothers me. And when I'm sitting at home or at work and I'm like, well, I could have been at a festival right now, but instead I'm here making money, which I need, for example. And whenever they say like, oh no, actually it rained at the festival, so I got all wet and the drinks were like very expensive, then I'm like, so I didn't really miss anything. Well, then I'm happy because, yeah, like you said, with the helplessness, like, oh, this was a stupid thing anyway. So whenever they're telling me, oh, it wasn't fun, then...
So you're not happy when your friends have a good time?
No, I am, but I need to be included.
Okay, that makes sense. One question I had, you talked about greed and how it is a personality trait, so it's kind of stable. What I sometimes hear from people who are going into the work phase out of student life is that they say that they experience less FOMO because they don't really want to go to that party anymore or something like that. Do you think that FOMO can increase or decrease in different stages of your life, or is it stable? That was the question I had.
Okay, I think that's a really interesting question, because I was thinking about sort of the FOMO and what your friends do and whether you're upset by it. I couldn't care less. I mean, I like it when my friends go out and have a great time, but that doesn't mean that I need to be part of it. And I think that has to do with, I have seen many things, I've been at many parties, you know, I like to go to parties. I go to like lots of concerts. I go tomorrow to Maastricht, and then I go to like theater on Monday in Eindhoven, and I like to do that, but it doesn't bother me if other people do it. So I think at some point in time, maybe you've collected so many things yourself that it doesn't really upset you anymore.
Yeah.
So that would mean that FOMO goes down the older you get, if you have had the opportunity to collect many experiences.
Yeah. Lennard, what do you think about it?
Yeah, so I think a little bit the same. I think that younger people probably feel it more, maybe because, well, yeah, your brain, of course, is not really fully developed, of course, until you're, what, like 25 or something. The prefrontal cortex does something, and it, you know, it helps inhibit certain urges that you have, of course, and when you're younger, that inhibition is not there as much, and you feel more this status competition type of thing going on, especially in your teens. I think everybody kind of felt that, like they're, you know, the world is watching you the whole time. I have this dimple on my forehead, and it feels like it's like this big, and you know, so you're constantly trying. I think in that period of your life, you're constantly tracking what is my position within kind of the market or the society or the tribe. Where do I stand as a man or a woman? You're developing into that, and where is my position? And I think that kind of alludes to having more fear of missing out, because you're constantly checking everybody and, you know, being in that type of position. And when you're older, you kind of have your status already. You're a professor, and you know what your worth is because your scale was published everywhere around the world. So you're kind of satisfied then, probably more. And you don't feel the need as much to prove yourself or see yourself in what position you're in the society. It kind of sets itself already.
So when you get older, does it change to JOMO, so joy of missing out, or?
Sometimes, yes. At least I have.
Yeah, so I think it also has to do with sort of being aware of your preferences, so what you like and what you don't like. And I think when I was young, there were many things that I thought I liked, but I didn't like that much. And now I know better what I like, and totally fine with missing out on things that I don't like that much.
Yeah, of course.
And also, so I do travel a lot. So my partner is a stewardess with KLM, and I travel, what is it, like 3-4 times a year with her to exotic places. I like it, but I've also seen quite a lot of them, so I don't necessarily need to go to all of them. I've not been to Bali, but I've been to many other places.
Me neither.
So, yeah, I think and is there joy in missing out? Also, I think I'm totally fine with it. You know, I really like it when my friends go to see something that they enjoy. You know, if they go to, I don't know, Coldplay or so, I don't want to be found dead in the Coldplay concert. But if they go there and they like it, good for them. You know, makes me happy.
Yes. Okay. Are there any questions from the audience? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, I have a question for Lisanne, actually. And I'm going to go a bit down a different route, but I experience a lot of academic FOMO myself because there are so many opportunities these days to develop yourself besides your studies. And I want to do a board year and an internship and an exchange, but you can't do all those things at the same time. So I was wondering, how do you as a fellow student experience that? Yeah, I kind of get what you mean with academic FOMO. I didn't used to have it at first because I wasn't, like, I had other student life experiences that I'm like, oh, well, I like going to this party more than I like going to a board meeting, for example. But now I also experience it. I kind of feel like I'm always running like behind the facts, or like, oh, you should have already like entered your resume for this, or you should have done a board year because it's so good on your CV, or yeah, actually traineeships, for example, like, oh, people apply for them, and then I'm like, oh, you do that? And shoot, I should have done that as well. So yeah, I'm kind of experienced that too. I feel like I'm running behind on everything sometimes.
Can I ask a question about it?
Of course.
Yeah.
So is it, because this also relates to your previous comment, when I hear you, I'm not really sure if you miss out, if you fear that you miss out on it, or that you fear that other people do it. So, you know, are you upset that other people do have good stuff on the CV, or is it the fact that you don't have it? What element?
I think both, but then maybe more the fact that other people do have it and I don't, because yeah, I mean I'm art and media studies, so it's not looking great for me on the job market. So then I'm like, oh yeah, I really should be better and make myself more easy to hire because I have different experiences. And then when other people do have it, like a board year or something else, I'm like, oh shit, I should have done that. Or they have that on their resume. So if, let's say, we were going for the same job, then I would know I wouldn't pick me, I would pick the other person with the better resume.
I think social comparison is really a bitch, because it really leads to lots of frustration. And what I think would be really important is to find out what future employers care about. Because I think there's often a mismatch between what students think employers care about and what the employers actually care about. So it might be that the employer, doesn't really care about the board year at all. And then all of you are fighting to do it and squeeze it in and borrowing lots of money, getting into debt. And maybe they don't care about it. Maybe they do, I don't know. But I see, I only get applications from people in for academic jobs. And they put stuff on their CV that I really don't care about, but they think is really important. So, that match is really something I think that can spare you from a lot of FOMO.
Yeah, but then I have the question, I don't know what I want to do later, but I do know that some general things, people always say it, oh, do a board year, it looks so good on your resume, for example. And yes, you're right that I should probably look into what my future employer would like me to do, but if I don't know, then I'm going to go for the general things that always look good on a resume, probably. I think so.
So you don't know what to do when you grow up, basically, but do you know what kind of or type of organization you want to work at? Yeah.
I mean, I like doing volunteer work, and I get a lot of joy out of helping other people. So I'd like to do a job that makes that matters, that I can help other people, whether it be at a municipality or maybe for the government, hopefully, who knows. Yeah, so that's what I want to do. And I guess that for some things, yeah, a job where you're helping other people, it's very easy to have skill. A lot of people can do that. Everyone wants to help other people, probably. So yeah, it's a bit, how can I find skills or things that look good on my resume for that kind of area of expertise,
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, right there.
What I see is, social media is less social the past few years. First, it started off with showing your friends what you did in life and Instagram and stuff. But I have a feeling that, as a teacher, I see some students using it, that they send more personal messages to individuals instead of getting it onto your social media for everyone to display. But that, what I feel is that the fear of missing out shifts from the perspective of your own friends, but more to creators and influencers showing the good life. Is that do you have some opinions about it, or is there some study results that can be interesting on that topic, or?
I don't know of any study results, but I do think that's happening, of course. So you see more of it's the paradox of choice thing that I mentioned, that you see more of the choices that are there, or more of the options in people as well. So, they have this morning routine, or I should do that as well, or I didn't even know that was possible to do a board year now. And you see that not only from your fellow students, but then you see those types of bigger things from people that are influencers. So I think it broadens the options, which makes you feel like you're missing out on even more that's there. So yeah, it probably it probably makes it more. Yeah.
Yeah, it might also have a positive side, I think. So I'll give you an example. I go to conferences regularly, a few per year. And these conferences differ enormously. So there's some really small conferences, like the small conference is like one group of people in a room, they meet for like, I don't know, 2-3 days, they all give talks and everybody's there. But I also go to like conferences where there's like 5,000 people and there might be like 40 parallel sessions. And if I'm at one of those conferences, I immediately realize I'm missing 39 of the 40 talks that are happening. I might as well miss the 40th talk and go outside and have a beer somewhere with somebody. You know? So missing out on things might be bad, but the moment you realize you miss out on basically almost everything, it's so easy to sort of get rid of the worries about it. So in that sense, you know, I really love to miss out on many things, because the more I miss out on, the more easy it is for me to focus on what I actually like. But I don't know if there's any research on that.
And I think you mentioned an important part, that you know what you like. And I think that's often a hard thing for students, or when you're younger. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was growing up. Sometimes I still don't know. So you can often ask this question to people: what do you want to do when you grow up? And I think a lot of people don't know. And yeah, you have these types of people that say, well, you have more generalists and more specialists, of course. And well, everybody wants to strive to be a specialist. I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a fireman. And then you know what you want to do. And it's kind of alluring to have that type of purpose, right? That is really centered and focused. But I think a lot of people don't have that, and they're kind of searching, and then you want to see all the different 40 talks, and it's kind of harder. So when you kind of narrow your things down that you like, and that's kind of, yeah, the exploration I think that you have to do as a human being during the whole course of your life. So I was in a firm for a long time where I had a lot of interns, and basically what I said was that the most important part of your internship is knowing what you do and don't like. And maybe you come to the conclusion that everything, what we do, you don't like it, and that's great. Then your internship has succeeded, because you can stripe that off the list at least, and you have more options or better options to choose from, probably. So I think that's also one of the things you need to do as a student, is just to figure out, what do I like, right? And what is more, coming towards me, and then I go back a little bit to the feeling part. You kind of know when your feelings are, when you're in touch with your feelings, you kind of know better what you do like. So this attracts me, or this repulses me, or whatever. You need to be in touch with those a little bit to understand what you want.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes, right here. Oh, I'm sorry.
My question is more philosophical now, because, yeah, you are talking about missing out, and it's more like existential, I think, because even you get the ultimate most best CV or whatever, you can still feel bored or not fulfilled or whatever. You can find yourself there. And Lacan says something that you have to be able to understand, that you are always going to feel this emptiness, because you can never be feeling fulfilled. And that emptiness feeling is actually making you to move to a different direction, to discover more, to find a different aspect of yourselves and such. And there's always going to be the next best job, or the movie, or the book, or whatever, but it's infinite. It's all about our perception of time, I think. Isn't?
Yeah, so yeah, I think there's a lot of different people that have those different types. You can maybe see it on a spectrum of people that are more satisfied with life easier, and people that are very ambitious and want to do stuff. And I think there's a difference between feeling the ambition with a kind of a fear behind you, like you need to do everything right, instead of wanting it. So, I have some entrepreneurs coming into my therapist clinic as well, and they say, well, the self-attack that I have, kicking myself in the butt every morning, really helps me to let my business thrive, because I put in the hours, I want to do more and more and more, but at the same time, they feel kind of empty as well, or they don't feel that satisfied ever. They're not proud of the work they do. So then the question comes in, okay, what do you want? And do you want to, kick yourself in the butt every day till you die, basically? And is that a nice way of living? For some people, it maybe is. But I think for a lot of people, it isn't. And then you can try to say, well, maybe lose that fear that's behind you, like a kind of picture it in my head as a kind of like a semi-truck racing towards you the whole time, and you're running the whole time and running faster, but you're the one driving that truck, basically, that is after you. So if you kind of stop and turn around and you can push the button on the truck to not move anymore, maybe you have more freedom to really choose what you want instead of doing it because you fear something of not having something or something. But yeah, so for a lot of people it drives you, I think, but it's not the only driver per se that people need in order to do certain things. I think there can be a more healthy side to it, but then you have to know what you want. I don't know what you think about
There was a question there, I think. Yeah.
I agree. I think what is so what I'm thinking about sort of the discussion until now, and it's not that there's not things that I don't like or to do, because there are many things that I think I miss out on, but it doesn't mean that I cannot enjoy what I'm doing. So when you said I feel academic fear of missing out, I immediately thought, yeah, I have that. There's so many articles I still want to read that I have printed out and that are waiting on my desk, and I don't have the time to read it. So I see that. There's many books I have that I still want to read. But I still enjoy the ones that I like. But if I would have the time, I would like to study law, because I think it would be really cool. Or I would study biology. My oldest son is a biologist, and he just started a PhD studying self-medication in bees. I think it's so cool. I would like to do that. Right? So there's many things I still would like to do. But I'm not frustrated about it. Yeah. But I wish my life had, my day had 48 hours. Yeah. Without sleep.
Yeah. If we cut the sleep, maybe.
Yeah, but I also like sleeping. I think we have a question there.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what you think is so interesting on the topic of FOMO. So why did you start studying it or working with it in your practice?
Okay, so for me, I'll answer it quickly. I studied regret since the early 90s, because it was basically my dissertation topic, and when sort of FOMO came up, I thought, man, this is just anticipated regret. And I've been writing all these articles about how this works. Why do they come up with this complex new word for the thing that I've been studying all those years? And then, of course, I realized this was a good word because it connected anticipated regret, maybe a shitty word, to social media, and it made it more interesting. And then the study I talked about, I actually ran that with one of my master students who wanted to do something with FOMO, and I said, I have an idea what we can do. We can just plug in some of the other stuff that I'm doing. That's basically it for me.
Yeah, so I think all kinds of different psychological topics are interesting. It used to be called Keeping Up with the Joneses, right, in English, so it goes way back before the social media part, but I don't think social media has really lifted it up, and I do this podcast with Thijs Launsbach, who's written a book called Asociale Media. So, we both of us strive or fight a little bit against the social media empire to get people to be more healthy, because it really retracts a lot of people from their mental health, I think. And also one of the things I'm doing right now with my son, who is in elementary school, is I'll do a talk in a few weeks for parents there to kind of educate them what the smartphone in elementary school is doing to kids. Because I think that's a really big problem with bullying and already having that much screen time, etc., etc. In the school, they can't have the mobiles anyway, but you see when I stand on the playground and my kid comes out, all the other older kids, they come out with their phone hanging out already. So that's really, I think, a big problem. And so they're already going to engage into this type of FOMO type thing also as well. So I think, it's an interesting concept for a lot of people, and it starts off, I think, already really young, and with the mobile phones and stuff like that, it's getting more out of hand. So
on a meta view, what I like about this is I'm just saying this is all anticipated regret. And then I hear here it used to be called Keeping Up with the Joneses, and the funny thing is Keeping Up with the Joneses is typically used in the envy literature, because that has to do with what you have and what other people have. So I'm a big sucker for what is sometimes called theory-induced blindness. My theories are all about regret and greed, so I see it everywhere. But if you're more in the envy corner, you see envy everywhere. So basically what what I end up studying is the stuff that I find interesting from my point of view, and I study it from my point of view. But of course, there's many different angles to studying the same thing, and we're all limited by our own experience and interest. So I now realize that when I say every FOMO is just anticipated regret, except that part of FOMO that is envy. Or greed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, so did you heard enough things that you wanted to know about FOMO, or is there something that you really want to know still? That you can do something about it, or I don't know, or are you gonna just let it slide and see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still wondering that what I'm doubting about when I heard you talking about FOMO, and yeah, you have to accept it, and also like just like the fact that, oh, I'm doing something else now without my friends, for example, and they're having a good time and I'm working for money, which is nice, for example. However, like you said, sometimes it really helps you, like, oh, build your business, or sometimes I do get a little satisfaction from the fact that, oh, the festival sucked and I wasn't there. I was enjoying, my thing was better to do. So then I'm like, yeah, I'm wondering, I know it's bad, but can I not just keep doing it a little? Yeah.
So there you touch upon something interesting, right? So you see the benefits that it has for you, and yeah, you don't need to get rid of it. You know, we say, yeah, FOMO is bad, and yeah, it's bad when you feel it's bad, right? If it really hinders you in a lot of things, and it's the same for all kinds of psychological disorders and stuff. It's only a disorder when you feel like it bothers your life, basically. So if it's, you know, if you have, like, I don't know, I had this young guy, I think he was like 16 or something, and he was really obsessed with keeping his skin not in the sun. So he wore hats, he put on lotion the whole time. So it's kind of like an OCD type of thing. But I was just asking him, does it bother you to have those things? Because his parents sent him to me, and he was like, no, I'm fine with it. I just put on the lotion. I don't get anybody bothering with it. You know, nobody bothers me with it. I just feel fine with it. And I was like, well, then you have no problem. Why are you here? Well, my parents sent me. So, okay, then maybe stop coming, because it doesn't make any sense. We cannot change you if you don't want to change. So maybe your FOMO is fine. Keep it.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good message to round it up with. Keep your FOMO. If you have any more questions, I want to invite you to the drinks afterwards. You get a free drink on us if you get a coin outside. It's just in the cafe here in the building. I want to thank you all for speaking, of course, and for all the information. It was really interesting to hear the two different views, to hear the impact of social media, to hear how greed is involved, to hear the triangle of conflict and the anxiety and the defenses around it. Yeah, I think we got a really broad view on FOMO, so thank you for that. Thank you all for coming, of course. If you have 1 minute, I want to ask you to fill in the 1 minute survey. That's right there on the QR code. Hopefully we will see you next time, and at the drinks, of course. Thank you all for coming.